Welcome to this explainer. I want you to think about the maple syrup sitting in your fridge right now. Pretty normal, everyday stuff, right? Well, today we are unpacking what might honestly be the most absurdly ambitious, science fiction-level agricultural megaproject ever conceived. It's called the Aroostook Heritage Sovereign. We're looking at a master blueprint designed to take ordinary maple syrup, a basic breakfast staple, and mathematically transform it into a multi-billion-dollar luxury asset. And look, this isn't just a farm. It is a permanent, 800-year wealth machine engineered to completely redefine what legacy wealth even looks like. So, let's jump right into it.
When you think of maple syrup, your brain probably goes straight to those quaint, folksy farms, right? Plaid shirts, snowy buckets hanging from trees, harvests that totally depend on the weather. Well, the Aroostook Sovereign completely rejects that reality. Instead, I want you to picture a biologically sterile, robotic, closed-loop mint. It operates with exactly 0 humans on site, and instead of the traditional 40-to-1 sap ratio, it uses a hyper-efficient 25-to-1 CRISPR-edited yield ratio. So for all intents and purposes, this is a biological factory.
To truly wrap our heads around how this blueprint works, we need to deconstruct it layer by layer. We're going to cover 1, the 800-year luxury estate, 2, the Gen 800 super maple, 3, the zero-human robotic grid, 4, the unbreakable perpetual trust, 5, selling absolute scarcity, and finally, number 6, the billion-dollar blueprint.
Okay, let's start with layer 1, the 800-year luxury estate. This is the macro level, focusing on the sheer physical footprint and the geographical terraforming required to actually pull this off.
The blueprint dictates acquiring a massive 144-square-mile contiguous block of land up in the northwest unorganized territory of Aroostook County, Maine. But here's the crazy part. They don't plant on all of it. To guarantee this place survives for centuries, they strip the outer 44 square miles completely bare. This creates the sovereign perimeter. Think of it like a 1-mile-wide, completely fireproof moat made of pulverized mineral soil and sterile native grass. And how do they guard it? With autonomous thermal drones. They constantly patrol this ring to ensure that even if a catastrophic, wind-driven wildfire comes through, there is absolutely 0 fuel for it to breach the inner estate. It's wild. This maple syrup farm literally has a robotic border patrol.
So inside that fireproof moat sits the sacred production core. And the scale here is just staggering. Exactly 5.12 million trees are planted across a 100-square-mile grid. But remember, this isn't a natural, sprawling forest. These trees are planted on a mathematically perfect 23 by 23-foot grid. And that spacing isn't random. Extensive silvicultural modeling proves this specific distance is basically the perfect social distancing for trees. It achieves the absolute biological maximum for sunlight without the root systems ever having to fight each other for subsurface nutrients.
Moving from the terraformed land to the biology, we enter our second layer, the Gen 800 super maple. This is where all those natural inefficiencies are just programmed out of existence entirely.
The entire biological engine of this operation relies on a very specific genetic modification called the CRISPR-edited knockout. In plain English, they edit the genes to snip the reproductive wire. Every single one of those 5.12 million trees is rendered permanently, irreversibly sterile. They can never produce seeds, flowers, or pollen. And this is actually brilliant for a legal reason. It guarantees absolutely 0 risk of gene flow to wild maples, which lets them completely bypass years and years of messy USDA ecological litigation. But the really crucial point is what this sterility actually does to the tree's metabolism. Because the tree is permanently sterile, the massive amount of energy it would normally spend making seeds and flowers, it gets trapped. The tree basically has no choice but to redirect all that surplus energy entirely into its sap. The result is that the sap's sugar concentration spikes to an unheard of 6.0% Brix. For some context here, a normal wild maple tree gives you about 2%. This hyper-sweetened mutation allows each and every tree to yield an incredible 60 gallons of sap per season.
Next up, we shift to the operational layer, a zero-human robotic grid. Because if you want something to last 800 years, you have to eliminate the most unpredictable variable of all.
The estate basically operates like a sci-fi movie. It utilizes a dedicated, fully autonomous fleet. You've got tapping drones flying around using sub-millimeter LiDAR to scan the bark, drilling top holes so perfectly they cause 0 cambial scarring to the tree. Then you have autonomous skidders roaming the grid, giving the soil precise nutrient treatments with dolomitic lime. And on top of that, aerial hyperspectral drones are continuously mapping canopy health. To make all this work without destroying the soil over the centuries, the physical grid includes dedicated 6-foot navigation lanes. Because there are no heavy human-driven tractors or foot traffic, the delicate root zones remain completely uncompacted forever.
The elimination of the human variable is paramount. The blueprint makes this explicitly clear. Humans suffer from fatigue, we make errors, and eventually we retire or pass away. By transitioning to a fully automated, dark factory operation by the year 2066, the asset is permanently protected from operational injury and generational attrition. It just becomes this infallible biological machine.
Which brings us to the legal abstract layer, the unbreakable perpetual trust. Because you have to ask, how do you protect a multi-billion-dollar asset from its greatest threat? Greedy descendants. Well, you lock it inside a jurisprudential fortress. The entire operation is 100% owned by a Maine perpetual dynasty trust, and it's governed by something called the Sacred Forest Purpose Clause. Maine law is incredibly unique here because it explicitly disclaims the rule against perpetuities. That means, unlike normal trust funds that eventually expire, this one is allowed to exist forever. This permanently shields the massive estate from estate taxes, bankruptcies, divorces, and literally any bloodline liabilities spanning across centuries.
So imagine it's the year 2300. A group of distant descendants decide they want a massive cash payout. They hold a vote to liquidate the 144 square miles and sell it all off to real estate developers. What happens? Absolutely nothing. The blueprint utilizes the C-Press doctrine, which makes it legally impossible for courts to alter the trust's original purpose unless it becomes physically impossible to execute. And just in case they try, a stewardship council manned by independent professional fiduciaries wields permanent veto power over any attempt to sell or dilute the land. The forest is permanently legally locked.
All right, so the biology and the law are totally locked down. Let's transition to the macroeconomic distribution strategy, selling absolute scarcity. To maintain the ultimate brand prestige, the blueprint strictly forbids any bulk commodity sales. You will absolutely never find this in a grocery store. Instead, 100% of the product is pushed through a highly guarded distribution network broken into 3 tiers. The foundation is the Heritage Estate Standard, which is priced at a highly optimized $40 per liter. Above that is the Sovereign First Flow, representing just the top 1% of the earliest spring sap. Now, this tier doesn't even have a set price tag. It operates more like high-end art. It's sold blindly at a global auction to elite collectors and sovereign wealth funds, and comes complete with cryptographic certificates of authenticity. And finally, a tiny fraction is locked away into the Century Vault.
And look, to justify those hyper-premium prices, the aesthetic engineering has to be absolutely flawless. They call this phrenological packaging. They use this extra thick, optical-grade flint glass that's molded into an architectural octagonal column. Notice there are 0 paper labels because paper peels and degrades over time. Instead, the branding is an inset heavy metal medallion, finished off with hand-dipped custom sealing wax. These decanters are essentially designed to be permanent luxury trophies. The idea is that even after the syrup is completely gone, they maintain this unpaid billboard presence in the homes of the global elite.
Finally, let's deconstruct the financial economics, the billion-dollar blueprint. This is where the mind-boggling patience required for a project like this truly comes to light. Because the Gen 800 trees need time to establish the vascular strength to withstand extreme robotic vacuum extraction, there is a massive 40-year maturation gap. From 2026 to 2066, there is 0 product revenue. None. So how do they survive? They fund these 0 revenue decades by selling documentary streaming rights to the estate's construction and by issuing early founders tokens. It's essentially a hyper-exclusive Kickstarter for billionaires, pre-selling the rights to the 2066 first harvest. This strategy generates decades of intense global hype before a single drop of syrup is ever processed.
And they are really going to need that hype to cover some truly staggering upfront costs. You're looking at nearly $90 million just for the dirt, the contiguous land acquisition itself. Add in almost $97 million for the subterranean high-density tubing network and another $25 million for decentralized concrete vacuum hubs. Before a single drop of syrup is processed, this project demands $250 million in front-loaded capital expenditure just to build the autonomous grid today. But here is where you get the financial whiplash. Because the estate operates with 0 human labor, the operating costs by 2066 drop to basically nothing. We're talking around 81 cents a gallon to run the microgrid and the predictive maintenance algorithms. Yet, they are selling 12.28 million gallons entirely through their hyper-premium direct-to-sovereign channels. When you do the math, that translates to a jaw-dropping $1.85 billion in projected annual gross revenue. Once it crosses that 40-year maturation gap, the margins are utterly unmatched anywhere in the agricultural sector. The Aroostook Heritage Sovereign is undoubtedly a masterpiece of intergenerational planning, biotechnology, and luxury marketing. But it really leaves us with a profound question to think about. When an everyday agricultural product is genetically sterilized, completely stripped of the human touch, legally isolated, and mathematically perfected into a permanent 800-year money-printing machine, is this the brilliant future of legacy wealth, or is it the ultimate hyper-engineered commodification of nature? It's a fascinating blueprint to unpack, and I hope this explainer gave you a clear picture of exactly how far the boundaries of agriculture and luxury can actually be pushed. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.